Welcome back, my Patreon legends. First out, going to start with a shout out to Sean, who's the newest Patreon. Shout out to Joa and Michael. You guys are legends. Thanks for supporting me and supporting this channel. Yeah. So, without further ado, this is the more in-depth, more up-close and personal look on the advert for Det Gule Hus, and a couple of technical things, for example, lenses, lights, and more on the editing side of things, which you may or may not be interested in, and a bit deeper in terms of the technicals. Also, I'll bridge across a little bit on the storyboarding aspects and the decisions made on the day, and also the days before in the pre-planning process. And then I'll also show you a little bit of the editing, just how quickly put it together and made sure that the clips, work together in that aspect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to DaVinci Resolve, just so we can have a look at our frames, and then we can go step by step into it. So I'm going to switch over to DaVinci now. So this was our first opening sequence. Now, if we have a look at this, it's a fairly flat shot. I'll give you a moment just to have a look around on this image. If you can see it there, I'll put it in full screen so we can get a bit of better an idea of what's going on here. I'm going to have some coffee because I did the first video as the freebie teaser, and now this is for you guys. My coffee's out. I had a lot of technical issues this morning. I had a lot of problems with audio and cracklies and all this kind of stuff, so it was a bit of a ball ache for me actually, but thankfully I've got time to do this just for you guys before I go and pick up my son. Alright, so let's have a look at the full screen here. As I mentioned in the first video, so I'm going to basically repeat everything, so there's no need that you watch the first video. Here, this is an opening sequence shot. This is locked off. So basically the camera is on a tripod. The frame is locked. That's it. We wanted to go for a real moody shot here. Initially in the storyboarding process, there was a rainy day that was meant to be forecast, and we wanted Krista to be sitting out getting wet in the rain. That was in the storyboard, but when it comes to reality, things aren't so easy, and when you're dealing with people as well, and also equipment, things get a lot more technical. And when you're working alone, like I was in this one, it's hard enough organizing the audio, organizing the lights and the camera and the direction of it all, and then having to make decisions there. And then when you start adding more elements, as in the elements, it gets progressively more difficult as we go along. And that, at the end of the day, having to deal with it is just a pain in the arse. So here we have an overcast day. It tells the story. It gets the job done. I think it worked out really well. We have the elements of the rain here, so we get it. We have Krista here sitting the subject, looking cold as, and actually it was quite cold. So the picture is somewhat complete. If we have a look at overall tonality of the image, because it's an overcast day, it's flat. You know, we have a big giant softbox creating an even light across everything, and things just look flat. So what I did here was I set up a light, and I'll just switch over to the main camera here. It was one of these little lights, a little high intensity kind of focusable LED Fresnel light. It's super tiny, but packs a little bit of a punch. I'm not sponsoring this product at all, but if you want to know, it's called a Light Panels Caliber. Now, I bought this in a set of 3 for I think it was €1,000 when I was living and working in Germany. And these lights have served me very well over the years. They're not so color accurate, but when working up against a light, for example, my Kino Flow lamp here, this is very color accurate and cinema grade light. These are less so, but they are pretty good in terms of their performance. And their output is pretty fantastic for such a tiny little light here. You can stick them anywhere. I had it up on a really cheap little Chinese made tripod that I got for like 10 euros or something like that, a pack of 2 or something, sent to my door. And I put them up there with a little weight at the bottom of the tripod, and I just focused it in like so, and then that puts a spot, that puts a flood. I think I had it somewhere in between with this shot, just to get a little bit more intensity. So if we go back over to the image itself, you'll probably start to notice it now, if you didn't notice it before, that Krista is somewhat separated from the background in this case. So we start to see here on the shiny objects that we're getting a little bit of a spectral highlight or a hot spot that is coming from the light that is pushing level down here on our subject. Krista, as you can see here, that there is something going on here. We've got a bit of shadow over on this side of the cheek, and then we've got a bit of light going on here. That is just so that we can get a general lift and separation from the background. It's not so much, but it's enough. It's definitely something worth looking at, you know, particularly when working in overcast days, that sometimes your subject can get lost, and it's good just to give that extra exposure level there, so you can either drop it down. Alright, so I was talking about a little bit of technical issues there. We are back, and we're going to jump straight back over to DaVinci Resolve without delaying anymore. So, yeah, so what I was talking about dropping down the exposure level in the camera. So, for example, you want to drop down your aperture so you can get a lot more detail out of the image. But what I mean actually here is the exposure level. But because we're putting light on Krista here, his exposure level is up just a little bit more than the general exposure that's happening in the background here, which is good. So if we actually have a look over at the clip attributes, so this is not the clip we use. This is, no, hang on, here we go. Here's the clip that we use. So here we've got a picture of me coming into screen, and me walking out with the string that's on the actual sign itself, which is pretty funny. But what we're looking at here is the focal length that we used in this picture, and also the camera aperture. So we're looking at f5 on the exposure here, and we're using the 15mm from Carl Zeiss, which I'll show you in a minute. But having a look at technically at this this shot here, we've got a nice beautiful wide shot here. Everything is super diffused, and this is the flat image, not the final graded image. But we've got some exposure on Krista, and it's quite dark in the background. If we jump back over to our timeline and have a look at this shot here, this is the final shot that's graded. You will see that the background, it's just a slight detail, but again, it's very important to when you're working with pictures that you understand what's going on here. But Krista is slightly more exposed than the background. He does stick out somewhat, but he's still blended within his background. But again, these details, they do pop out a lot more. So we got the typewriter, the kettle, the bits and the books and stuff like this. You'll notice also that the direction of the light is sort of up coming down, because we got a bit of shadow going on just under the books there. Also, as the scene progresses, you'll notice that Krista disappears from the scene there. Now, talking kind of, you know, about lenses with this one, there was a couple of choices that I was like, okay, what do I choose? You know, do I go ultra wide? Do I go wide, step the camera back? Do I go telephoto? All of these decisions are sort of dependent, a little bit of kind of experimenting there when you're on scene, because you don't know really how the scene's going to look until you're actually there. You can do scouting beforehand, and yes, you can kind of decide on that. But initially I had the Carl Zeiss 21mm, beautiful lens, but I found that 21mm was not giving me enough coverage, particularly in that scene. I just wanted a little bit more of the background and kind of a little bit more of the scene without having to step too far back. And also because of where we were in a car park. So we actually had that section where we were filming cordoned off, and on each side, just outside of frame, that there were cars there that were in the way. And, you know, it was still within operating hours. So we had to kind of, you know, play around with the space that we had allocated, but also work within the constraints. So instead of moving back, I went over to a 15mm. So this is a monster of a lens, as you can probably see here. Massive, about the size of my head. Beautiful lens. Comparatively to the 21mm. Actually, the 21mm feels heavier. Okay, doesn't really matter, technical things, whatever. But that's the kind of like director of photography's decision that has to be made in that circumstance, and go, okay, I've got one light just out of frame, pumping some light onto my subject. I want to reveal a bit more of the scene, but I can't move back. In fact, I need to kind of move a bit more forward. So just swap the lens out if you have the lens. If you don't have the lens, and, you know, not all of us have the luxury to be able to swap over lenses, then move the camera back and you'll get somewhat of the same effect. In this circumstance, you know, when switching over to an ultra wide angle lens, we get more of a dramatic wide angle effect. That was also something that I was going for there as well. So keeping in mind, if you've actually seen the lens comparison video that I've made up and put on the channel here, that's also a good reference to get a better understanding of how an image kind of gets more dramatic or compressed or whatever when you choose a different focal length. There is really not so much difference between the 21 and the 15. Actually, yes, but in terms of an art direction, there is a little difference. The 15 exhibits a lot more dramatic wide angle aspect, and this is what we were going for. If we go back to our DaVinci Resolve, this is, you know, if you to have a look at other 15 or like even wider angle lenses, or like ultra wide, like super ultra wide angle lenses, you get this kind of like fisheye effect going on here. This is why this lens stands out above the rest. We've got a very straight, clear image. There's no real distortion, and that's what I was going for. So working with the space confines that I had, we got cars on either side of the frame, on the left hand side and the right hand side, just out of frame, which is good. And then, you know, when we pull the string as Krista leaves the table to get the thing, I'm literally just behind one of the cars in the back of that screen there, pulling that sign out of shot, and then Krista runs behind the car there. So instead of him running kind of that way, you know, we didn't have the space or the, you know, the time to move the car out of there for that shot, but you'll see him run behind the car there. But, you know, during this advert, and the advert's so quick, you don't notice these things. But that's why it's important to have a talk of the technical process as we break down the image here. So that's a little bit about the exposure and, you know, the lighting and planning of that scene there. Like, everything was really deliberate in that space there because we had that confines, and also the composition. We wanted that sign to go out of that screen because that helped with continuity onto our next screen as the sign flies in. Now, the good thing is we were on location of the actual company's headquarters, Det Gule Hus. We got to use their car park, their house, and also their kitchenette for this one. So you'll see that in the breakdown as we go further along. So if we go over to the next scene, this one gets a little bit more tricky. So I wasn't able to pull that sign in. So what we've done now is we've switched over to a more telephoto lens. So again, I used all Zeiss glass in this, but you can use any, just thinking about the focal length. I use this tiny little nifty 50 millimeter lens here. I love this lens. It's a super good quality and really inaffordable. manual focus lens. I love the glass from Zeiss. They give a really nice artistic sharp enough image. You know, if you're at f1.4, this is not sharp at all, but I'm not doing a lens review in this one. If we actually have a look at the attributes of this shot, and then going around to this one, we are at f3.2, so still giving a shallow enough depth of field as we are working with this shot. I believe that was f3.2 throughout the whole thing. Yeah. So this shot, as it goes along, we got that panning action there. We haven't got too much jello effect going on because I tried to do it so it wasn't wobbling around so much. What you would find when you're panning often with some cameras, especially with slower shutter speeds, you get this kind of line, these vertical lines that kind of bend over or get a little bit jelly. It's quite common for a lot of cameras because you've got two types of shutter systems. You've got global shutter, which is like exposing the whole image in one go, and you've got rolling shutter, which exposes not the full exposure on the sensor at a time, and this is why you get a little bit of this jelly effects rather than kind of like this natural movement going on. But that's a technical aspect that doesn't matter 9 times out of 10. It's just something to be aware of when you're shooting, particularly with, say for example, I was shooting with the old Blackmagic Blackmagic Cinema camera, which was a 2.5K, beautiful camera to work with, delivered some wonderful images and super inexpensive, and you get some really, really beautiful pictures from it. But the problem is it suffered from this rolling shutter thing. So if I ever panned that camera, I used to get some really hardcore wobbly lines, which just does not look good. If you're approaching something moving out, or very, very slow pan, you can get away with it. But I found any kind of fast panning movement just didn't work. I shot this whole entire advert on the camera that I'm filming on right now, which is the Scarlett MX. This gives very good performance in image quality, and also that panning issue wasn't really there. I mean, you could probably look deep into it and maybe find something going on there, but overall it was well controlled. So going into detail with this scene, this is a really important scene actually. Again, this is just on the other side of the car park scene. We've just switched sides, so notice how Krista is left here, and then it's left that screen and entered this screen and coming onto this side of the composition. So I've panned over from left to right, and then I've come to the stop under the sign, and we've planned this through with the storyboarding. And you'll notice here that there is some shadow going on here because I've shone the same light, this little Fresnel light, put it on the spot, all the way on the spot there, as you can see, spotlight on the sign here to give a good exposure level there. So you can have a look on the levels here. So our whites are up here in that exposure chart, and you probably actually also, you do see here a little bit of the DET in that exposure level, which is quite funny on the histogram there. Fun shot to work with because it was like we had to go through a few times because technically timing, also the pulling of the sign, we went through a couple of shots there. So that's sort of something that you have to try over and over again on the day. But once you get it, then you can pat yourself, cheers your beers, away you go. Again, working within the means of the project. So because it was a small budget, super small budget, we had to make do with what we got. So lighting is one thing. If you've got the lights already, awesome. If you don't, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but it does help with your picture composition, picture building, and all of this kind of stuff. and also your general workflow. Okay, am I going to put a light here? Is the light going to mean something? Is it going to give more emphasis on what I'm shining that light on, etc., etc.? So again, looking at the composition here, it was nice to have this straw bale that was already up there. And then when Krista came down, I wanted Krista not to block the De Gule Hus logo, because in a couple of the other takes, there was a couple of good takes before, but he was just blocking it. So what we needed him is to land on this position, and that was also tough. And a big shout out to Zoe Eskis, one of our friends in the local area, who pulled the string on this one while I panned. Thank you. You were a goddess when you made this happen. Krista landing here on point, might I add. And as we go up here for the reveal shot, we've got Krista here in the bottom hand left, and then we've got the hay bale, which has no real meaning actually, but here it helps balance out the picture a little bit. So we got this up here in this top right hand corner, and bottom left hand corner is Krista, and then we've got our logo, which is shining in the middle. Boom, here we are. So that scene was also pretty basic, you know. I set up a microphone on a boom just to get the running sounds, because it's important to get natural sounds as you go along, because we've got music playing on, but it's also nice to have some actual sounds of the scene going on in the picture. And that's also, you know, super difficult sometimes when you're worrying about directing, when you're worrying about with the camera in your hand, trying to get this going on, trying to figure out, okay, is this appropriate for the story? Is my picture looking good, etc., etc. You know, it's good just to whack a microphone up there and just put it on record. You know, do your pre-tests, of course. Sometimes you might get some clipping, but you know, you always bring that level down just to make sure that you don't get that clipping on the day, particularly when you're getting clapping sounds or running sounds on the pavement or whatever it is. But it was important in that moment that Krista, when he looked up, he went, "Ah," or "Ah." And there were a few times where we had to get him to make it sound believable, and he was also quite critical when he went through the motions there, so that was very helpful. But eventually this last scene was perfect, spot on, super quick, super simple. You know, you don't, as a viewer on this thing, you don't really appreciate the in-depths of this, because you go, okay, well, you know, it's super quick, you know, but what's the effect that you're going for? And as a director and a director of photography, you have to kind of think, okay, what's the most impact you can get in a scene that seems easy, you know. And this was one of those ones that we worked on it a few times, took a few takes, and we got the shot, which was great, without everyone being too exhausted or frustrated at the end. So with this shot, I think it was the last or the second last shot that we did, I wanted to get a couple more times through. I knew that we had this one in the basket, but I wanted them to go through just to see if we could get a better one. If not, we knew that we had, well, I knew particularly that we had one that was really well done, and the others were well rehearsed and done, but they just didn't have that rawness that this scene had. So sometimes when it come into the directing phase of things, it's good just to make a couple of extra takes just in case. Going on to the inside scene here, awesome. I will switch back over to the use of the small light again. Sorry about that. The use of the small light again. This light, you can put it in any corner. So here, just behind Krista's shoulder, if we're to have a look at this scene from there to finish, you notice that in this scene, from the beginning, that there's a lot of level or a lot of light coming in from behind over Krista's shoulder here. You know, this is paramount, really, just to bring up the levels in the scene, and just to show the picture what's going on here. Super simple shot. Him putting the typewriter down, and that's it. We didn't want to go further into showing that he's walking into the scene, and you know, just over describing the image. It was enough just putting that typewriter on the shelf, showing that he's gone in and he's put his hustling goods from outside, being in the rain, to being inside on a shelf, kind of organized like this. Now this here was actually somebody else's shelf and somebody else's things, but you know, we could lend and use the props that were already there. So that's a great thing about working with these kind of jobs, that you don't have to go and go all art department-y. With this one, you can just really just put it together, use all the stuff that you got at the location, and then boom, end of the day. Just looking at that scene, you can see that there is a lot of light coming from this one, because inside of Det Gule Hus, or inside of the location, there's a lot of these what do you call it, these tube lights, and they go they bring, you know, not a good quality of light. So what you need to do is you need to bring a light into the situation, and you need to shine that light in just to get some good visible light going on here. So that was simple. Set up one light, turn it on, and then you've got exposure in the room. So that with that scene, that was also done with a microphone boomed. So of course, with every situation, every scenario, it's good to try and get as much audio as possible. You can either use it or recreate it, but with this one, because of the plonking down of the typewriter itself, it was good to get that. Again, that was the same setup, kind of like what I'm doing here, booming the microphone above the head, above the camera, just get the shot. If we move over to the next scene, we have another wide shot here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little break because I need to run to the toilet. I'm just going to pause this one, so I will be back in just a moment. And we're back. Yes. All right. So we'll jump straight back into it. Here, this is the sitting in the kitchen scene. Now, this again was a deliberate one, and luckily we were able to use our location for this one. So this is the kitchenette of the location, and it was kind of a cozy little place that we could get set up for this one. There was nice big windows letting in a lot of light, which was great. And then what we did was we used some lights that we had available from the actual place itself. If we have a look here, I'll just chuck this one in full screen. So what we see here is we've got a couple of these practical lights just to give some kind of, you know, spotty spotness. Nice to break up the background there. We had a ukulele type instrument, just to make it kind of feel like, you know, your home. We've got some appliances that's going on in the background there. That's kind of obvious for when you're sitting in a kitchen like so. Again, we are using a big softbox, which is the diffuse sun, because it's an overcast day out here, which is great. We are pushing a lot of light in from this window here, which is giving exposure level to our subject there. And then in the background, we have just behind our subject here, we have a one of these little spotlights, again up, pointed down. I believe that I had it sort of semi-flood, semi-spot action going on there, just to give some light, some separation from the background, and just a little bit of definition in the hair here. Also, we get a little bit of rim light action and shadow action going on here over the general picture. So we have some elements in there which are kind of important to the scene, very much so. We have our coffee grinder, fresh coffee, coffee's in there, freshly brewed. We've got our mobile phone here, which is important for the story because this company do have an online aspect notification system, and also you can check what sales have been done for from your shelf, which is cool. So what you've sold, essentially. So that's all part of the storytelling. So this is the last scene of the advert, super quick through. We've got a scene where he's just sitting reading the paper, and that's it. If we go on to the next scene, so if I just get out of full screen there and quickly jump over, so we have the and we're back again from another technical issue. It's just one of those days. So that's always what it's like when relying on so many different bits and pieces of equipment. However, we'll jump straight back into it again. So we're going back onto our product shot. Well, it's not product shot, it is our green screen shot here. And this one's quite difficult, actually. 1, to light it, 2, to shoot it, and 3, to like After Effects it, especially with the grading and all that kind of process. However, it's not impossible. It took me only a day to try and figure everything out, with frustrations all over the board. But that's how it is. We're problem solvers. We are people working to achieve the image that we're going for. Now, this is a kind of a common shot that you will see in a lot of adverts today, because everybody's got a mobile phone. It's the extension of us. So it's the extension of a lot of businesses as well. So what you'll see here is that this mobile phone has got a very very bright screen, and also the perspective here is not so perfect. Now again, this is super low budget. This is just what happens in the process. Because I'm no super duper expert, like I've cut this, I've done the full production from planning to finalizing. If we're to actually look at the original clip, and this will be quite interesting for you to have a look at. So here's the original clip. This is as simple as that. So I made on Photoshop a little green screen and then just sent it with the same phone dimensions as this phone here. And this was able for me to cut that screen out and overlay that blinking message. So this is another interesting aspect for people when they're doing this kind of work, because this is kind of a lot of standard stuff that's happening, you know, introducing mobile devices, iPads, iPhones, mobile devices in general. We won't talk about specific brands there, but it's just on the tongue. So here, this is interesting for if one is to have movement. So my first initial thought was that the phone would blink, and then Krista would pick up the phone and then go from there. But that proved to be super difficult with this green screen and tracking. And that's what these little bubbles or these little discs are here. This is perfect for tracking subjects, because there is in DaVinci Resolve a great mode called tracking mode. And yeah, so this is what that is designed for, and the green screen is just typical to remove the green when you do the keyer, etc., and put your image in there. Moving on from this one, this is not so technically difficult, but it is something to mention, because it's like, how do you light this scene, and how do you try and do it well for when you do it into post. Now, I could have done this a bit more with care from the beginning, but overall the image is not too bad. We have shooting in the shadow side, which is quite nice definition wise. So we're getting a lot of the highlights. One from the outside here, as you can see, the fruit bowl and the fruits have got their general exposure. We have some nice fill light here. We've got the light from behind our subject here, which is giving these shadows here some exposure level on, and giving some highlights there on top of the hand. We're getting some hard shadows here. You know, it's a bit rough, I'll admit that, but overall the image worked in the end. And we've got a nice kind of diffused shine over the phone here, just to give it that believable image But when I found a difficulty when I came into the editing of this scene. So we notice here that none of the actual phone shine is coming on the screen, and this is just a mistake, and also level of my keying and 3D experience, and also just shooting this scene pretty much, I think, for the second time, but in this circumstance it was a little bit more difficult for me. But again, it's so quick you don't really notice it. I could have put a little bit more care and just added that shine and kind of 3D texture. It was a rounded phone, so it was even more difficult in the end to pull that one off. But super quick scene, done. Moving on straight away to the next shot. This, I believe, was done on the 35mm. Let me just double check that one. I do believe, yes, 35mm and at f2.8. So, and that's shot on the 4K crop. So if we're to do our slight conversion, because with the red cameras, they crop in on the image when you shoot from 5K to 4K to 3K, etc. It crops in on the sensor. So if I have a look at my red tools here, that 35mm actually becomes, in effect, and this is a cool little app for anybody who wants to, that is using a red camera, but also wants to have a look at crop factors and all this kind of stuff. It works out very well. So if I put in my Mysterium X and then 4K, which I was shooting at, let's see the results of a, what was it, 35mm. I'm getting, in effect, a 43.8mm focal length there. So it is even tighter than what it would be at full format, but it's okay. We can live with that. But 43 is a good focal length, but it's also, when you think about it, you're still getting the 35mm compression. And I do love the 35mm lens in a lot of my work, just because of the actual look it gives. Yeah, so as we can see there, we're getting this lovely kind of separation from the background at f2.8. You know, we've got that soft light coming in there. We've got that reflection light going on there as well. Super simple shot. It's locked off. No panning movements whatsoever. I want to keep it as simple as possible. That was the same for that shot, for this shot, and for that shot. So going back quickly to this shot, this was a shot on the 50mm, and this wide shot was shot on the 15mm. Because I was literally, our subject was there, and then I'm maybe, you know, less than 45 centimeters, you know, a good yardstick away from our subject here. And to get that wide shot is extremely difficult, especially when working with a crop sensor. So if I'm looking at 15, I'm like at 19 millimeters. So it's still wide enough, but you know, in this sense, I don't have a whole lot of room to play with. Composition wise, it's good, well balanced. We've got a subject here, we've got a bit of space in that one there. Same with this one. Could have come down a little bit more here towards the phone, just so the phone was kind of a little bit more central, but it is what it is. And when being rushed, you sort of have a time limit, and I do believe I was on my last minutes of battery here. No, I was actually plugged into the wall. I was on my last minutes on my SD cards, because I only brought 2 at the time, and they were full at the end of the day. Whew. So luckily with our take there, super simple, comes up, Krista says nice, and then we go into our logo shot, and that's it. Yeah, so that's kind of it for that more in-depth breakdown on this video here. A super short advert. I think, what was the total? It was like 30 seconds, not even 30 seconds with the logo out. So if we have a look at a little bit on here, it's like 25 seconds with our last scene. So to cram that amount of information and condense it into 25 seconds to try and get your planning and go, okay, well, What scenes do I need to be able to develop that story, to make that story kind of understandable and believable, and then go from there. So again, you know, a little bit more about the equipment itself. I try and, when working in these circumstances, I like to have all of my equipment with me. That means my full lens kit, just in case I need to swap it over, because I don't have zoom lenses, I only have prime lenses. So I've got a couple of lenses here just in front, because these are the ones that I used in the example. So I've got my 50mm, my 35mm, 21 and 15, and that will cover a broad spectrum of my ultra wides to my tighter shots there, what I need to go. I also have a couple more lenses to complement this kit, like a 28mm and an 85mm. But in this circumstance, you know, you're covering a wide range of the sort of standard length here, and they do have a zoom lens, so like a 17mm to a 50mm, and that's kind of like what you would use in a lot of circumstances like this. Also with lighting, you know, you've got to work with what you've got. Sometimes it's not so easy to take a big flight case with some big Kino flows and then set them up on a rainy day. That's why I chose to go with these little lights here, because they were easy to put up on small tripods and then go from there. So going to take a little break and come back after this one, and I'm going to get a glass of water. Why do I like this 50mm lens? Why do I have it? Why do I like this 15mm, and why did I buy Zeiss, you know, or Falklander or whatever? And I think that's kind of important to get a little bit of an insight from my perspective, to go, okay, well, you know, Patrick is able to produce these adverts and short films on the equipment that's available to him. Albeit that I'm in a stage right now that I've changed over from my Blackmagic system over to a Red system. And I think that's important to kind of talk through about why I made those decisions per se, because, you know, as an artist, as well as a technician, as well as, you know, a professional working in this industry, I cross over very many lines, and I have to go, okay, what is the stuff that I rely on at the end of the day? Do I go, what am I looking for? Quality? Am I looking for quantity? What am I going for here? What does my future job prospects demand of me? What is it that my clients are demanding of me? What is it that I'm demanding of me here? And what is the kind of goal for my professional career as well as my creative career at the end of the day? And I think that's important for oneself to kind of stop and reflect and go, is it necessary to have all of this stuff? And you know, you have to be kind of honest with yourself. Do I use it often enough to have it? If not, then should I sell it and reinvest in something that I do use often? And this is like a practice of elimination, and this comes over time. You know, if you don't have a whole lot of money, like myself in the beginning, I started off with a DSLR, for example, and you know, and this is what I want to go over when I start having a look at some of the gear and some of the items that I do use all the time, as well as some of the items that I don't use some of the time but are interesting to have in the toolbox, because you know, sometimes you do use them because you may work with other people, and it is important to be that flexible if you do have a bigger budget job or if you are working with other technical items. And I want to share my experience as much as possible so that you guys get an enriched education, I guess, and also insight from someone who is working from this as a main job. Now, the stuff on the Patreon page is really focused around this experience thing, also focusing around the advice and also inspirations. You know, that's the name of the podcast, Advice and Inspirations, that I want to talk to other professional people who are working in the industry, also in other industries, but they are somewhat connected to what we do as filmmakers, or what I do in my everyday job, that it is important to have a bit of an understanding of the world that's around you. And, you know, I I want to share that experience at the end of the day, that I go, okay, hey, look, I'm being as real as possible, talking about relating my experiences that I've had, and also things that I've been learning along the way, and wanting to share that, and hopefully, inspire you to create something great. At the end of the day, I'm here about bringing that community together to make an enriched environment so people can go, whoa, actually, it's not impossible to do this, but it does require a little bit of thinking. And that's what I've been doing a lot. I've been doing reading, and there's a great piece of literature which I would like to actually grab right here, if you bear with me for just 1 second. This is a book that I can recommend. It's called Painting with Light by John Alton. And this is a lovely piece of literature that gives a bit of an old school insight. But, photography as its as a fundamental thing, it is using light to expose an image. So whether it's film or still photos, it is pretty much the same concept. You need a light to expose your image, and then you've got shadows and all of these things going on that create an image. So now, for example, I've got here in this picture, from what I can see going on, I've got a bit of shadow going on this side because I've got my key light going on here, and it's a strong key light. I've got a bit of backlight going in here, so I've got some shape going on. These concepts are the same in stills and video. And I'm wanting to reiterate that fact as I go along and as I create content for this page, because it is an insight that's ever evolving, and it's really exciting. So when there is something new and exciting that I learn, or like a topic that you go, hey, Patrick, do you know this, or have you got any understanding of this? I think that's cool to share that with me, because then I can bubble it up in my head and go, okay, well, what can I create out of this? And this is also cool because it's an exciting opportunity here, because I'm trying to make this a little bit more personal rather than just talking at a camera. But also to go, okay, well, look, here's my intention. Here at the end of the day, I want to create something fun. I want to create something that I can look at myself and go, whoa, that's really cool. I'm inspired by that. Maybe I'll use that in the next job or the next creative project or whatever it is. And there are things that are always rolling, and there come in some demands here and there that they go, hey, I've got something specific, and you have to bear in mind that this whole job, this whole creative process is never the same each time. You have to be flexible, and tech is definitely ingrained and a part of this. And the more you understand your tech, and the more you're comfortable with your tech. Although I can't really say too much today, I had technical problems, but I was able to solve that issue because I found out it was this, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, you kind of have to be flexible and understand that things don't go right. and just saying, like, that's a prime example of today. But as long as you persevere and you're able to set out and do the thing that you started to do. And this is also a bit of a philosophical one for me, and this is something that's evolved with me as well. That the philosophical aspect of getting something done at the end of the day, it's about not being lazy and just going, I can do this, I can get it done. And that's something that is really important as a creator, a creative person, but also as a professional. You have to get through that. You have to get through the perseverance. Sometimes I go, oh gosh, I don't really like editing, and this is why I like doing things in one go, or live, or switching in between, because editing is not my favorite thing. But sometimes there are things, if you go, okay, I'm just going to do the edit, that you find that there is pleasure in doing it. I think the biggest thing that's stopping you is you actually at the end of the day from getting something done. And that's something from a personal perspective that I go, okay, well, I need to persevere through and improve myself personally, as well as to improve myself professionally, because they are totally just one piece at the end of the day. So just a quick recap on my intentions over the next thing. I'm going to do a couple of gear breakdowns. I'm going to talk through some lenses, some lights, and some bits and pieces that are in my toolkit that at the end of the day make my life easier when I'm creating, and also go through some creative, let's say forum, or maybe like live talk. So I want to set up a time where I do a live stream and then have you guys there live, and I'm going to record it, of course, but we're going to go through and then we're going to start setting up a couple of like little creative challenges. And I think that's cool, you know, that we go, okay, well, we can not only like help each other develop, you know, this community, and that's what I plan to do here, and that's what I want to do, is that it's not just a you pay me and then I just make this stuff. It's about enriching a community of creative people and helping support each other and help develop creatively. That if I'm able to share the insights of what I can share and help you guys grow, if that's what you want to do in terms of something you know, private or whether it's professional. And you know, also if you're here and want to just you know, understand that that aspect of the creating and just stand back and go, okay, I just want to learn my piece, that's cool. But yeah, I'll leave it with that one now, and I look forward to hearing your feedback, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, adios. I am Captain Quote.